All right, everyone. We have a very special guest back here in the Brownie Postgame world. The oest of YouTube Browns OGs, Mr. Quincy Carrier, the dog father himself, the man personally responsible for destroying the career of Colin Cowherd in Cleveland. Quincy, what's going on, dude?
I thought you were going to tell me I was personally responsible for running Baker Mayfield out of town because I've heard that one before too, you know.
I considered that, but I was like, you know what? This one actually makes a little bit more sense. It's funny. Quincy and I were just talking before we went on here. Like the first time we talked was like on a YouTube was like 3.5 years ago in 2019. So it is wonderful to have you back. And by the way, I'm rocking the Quincy Carrier merch, by the way.
Wow.
So
Oh, the Color Rush jersey.
that's right. I am a member of the bot squad.
Appreciate that.
Yes, sir. So welcome back. First and foremost, how's everything been going on in your world? You've been exploding. So talk to me about like everything in your YouTube world.
I mean, it's just kind of been business as usual. I've just been uploading. You know, it's interesting to me the longer, and I'm fortunate to be able to do this as a career, but the more I do this, the longer I do this, the less and less I freak out about the micro, and just I'm focused more on the macro thing. So like, back in the day, I would be super freaked out if a video didn't hit a view count that I wanted it to. But now it's like, yeah, some going to hit, some aren't. Just got to keep going along every day with it. And just gotta put my head down and work. I talk about this when I talk to Engraven all the time, but it's funny when you do YouTube for your first year, it's kind of like being a rookie quarterback, right? Like you're checking your notes, you got all this stuff prepared for you so you don't mess up when you go on camera. And now, I'm in this is about to be my 5th season covering the Browns, right? So, it's like, I'm ready to run a 2-minute offense off memory. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, absolutely, dude. All right, let's get into it then. Let's talk a little Browns. Let's talk a little Browns preseason, since we're still technically in the preseason. And I want to get your take on how things went, offense, defense, special teams, that kind of stuff. First things first, who would you say was the most impressive and on the offensive side of the ball, a standout guy who surprised you and would be considered like the offensive MVP of the preseason? Who would you go with for that?
I would have to go Jerome Ford, right? He's the only guy. Well, I mean, maybe Josh Dobbs, if we want to do the Josh Dobbs.
I thought you were going to go Dobbs.
Yeah, but I mean, like, I'm thinking about impact on the season. I think Jerome Ford's probably, you would hope, have a bigger impact than Dobbs does, even though Dobbs is going to get in there with a couple packages during the year, but he's mainly going to be a backup.
Sure.
Jacoby doesn't really play a high-risk style to where I would think he would be injured a ton. And he's such a big guy that I don't think that's going to be that much of a factor. But yeah, I mean, Dobbs and Ford, I think you could say those two have been the two sparks on offense. Look, Josh Dobbs, he's kind of famous for this in Pittsburgh. He plays the preseason like a regular season game. So it's hard to gauge like how much of him looking good is him like legitimately growing in his offense and him just like taking it more serious than everybody else on the field than he is right now. But he's a really good practice squad backup quarterback kind of level guy. He's a 2 or a 3. And I like what they've seen out of him. And I think his value for this team is going to be, I think a lot of people get this idea that Jacoby Brissett is like this athletic mobile quarterback, right? But he's really not. He is slow of foot. Yeah. So, I mean, it's kind of like he has some quickness and he has some escapability. He's kind of like Big Ben was back in the day before Ben was like destroyed with all the injuries. Yeah. You know how Ben was kind of mobile, but it wasn't like he was scrambling. Yeah. He's kind of like that. Now, I didn't fully compare him to Big Ben, so I don't want people in my mentions stuff like that. But yeah, so he's kind of mobile on that level. So when you want to run some of these plays that you would have with Deshaun in there, Josh Dobbs is a better fit for that. And I think Josh Dobbs' future with this team could be as the long-term backup of Deshaun Watson, because if you look at what this regime has done with the backup quarterback position, they want to have that room emulate the strengths of whatever quarterback that they have in there that's unique, right? When Baker Mayfield was in here, quarterback room was all below 6 foot, all Kyle Shanahan system guys, right? Case Keenum was here. It was Nick Mullins. It was that kind of a situation. Now that Deshaun's here, I think you're probably going to see Josh Dobbs be the backup, maybe a Phillip Walker, even though he's much shorter, or Josh Johnson. Those kind of templates for the backup quarterback, because you want to be able to run some of those special plays when you have your backup in there. And I think that's what Dobbs is going to bring to this team is, hey, maybe in the red zone, you dial up some packages for Josh Dobbs so you can, have that extra threat as a runner there when you want to run in these run situations, so you can spread the box out a little bit from the gun or from the pistol set. So that's going to be something I think they're going to use with Josh Dobbs. Jerome Ford, I mean, he looks like Josh Dobbs looks good for a backup quarterback in the preseason.
Mhm.
Jerome Ford looks legit good. Like, he looks like he could be a running back, a really good starting running back in the NFL. And for a team that has no shortage of starting running backs on their roster, I mean, just talk about the rich getting richer in that position. But yeah, I think Jerome Ford, he has a bright future ahead of him. I've been a big fan of his. I've been advocating for him since he came out of Cincinnati. I felt like people were giving Desmond Ridder too much credit for that offense. I felt like Jerome Ford was the best player on that offense for a non-Power 5 team that went to a playoff, right?
Sure.
College football playoff for the first time. And I think he's going to be a nice addition here in Cleveland.
Yeah, and if you think about the guys that the Browns brought in this year, guys like David Bell and him, right? Later round draft pick guys, but they had really good and really productive college careers, and now we're going to be able to slot them into role players that potentially, if certain things kind of fall the right way, could turn into like really, leading type players. We've seen in the past where Chubb and Hunt went down, knock on wood, but that was the emergence of Dearness Johnson, and now it's like Dearness could be like a bubble guy going into the 53, right?
Yeah, I mean I feel like we're also in this transition period too as Browns fans, where we're not necessarily one of the better teams in football, but we're not bad, right? And I think Browns fans are used to like either surprise good or terrible, right? And we're kind of like locked in this mindset when we're a team that's like, at worst, we're probably hovering around 8-8. Well, eight wins,
Sure. I still do that too.
Yeah. So it's like when you're that level of a team, these roster decisions become very difficult because you're going to be super strong in some areas and weak in others, right? And that's where this becomes difficult because you might have to give up a starting level running back just so you can add on a replacement level wide receiver because you just don't have enough, right? So that's where this becomes real difficult for Andrew Berry and company, and that's kind of where we are. And quiet is kept. If you ask people around the league about the Browns front office, look, they might pout about that contract that they gave Deshaun Watson, right? But they feel like the Browns are one of the better run organizations in football, and they feel like the Browns are certainly a model to follow. And if you don't believe me, ask the president of the Baltimore Ravens why he was hired, right? In Sachi Brown, because he's basically there to be who Paul DePodesta is. And the Browns, I mean, they're the only team. They're the first team for sure that did something like that, because I remember they took a ton of flack for hiring a baseball guy to run operations. Baltimore went and took a basketball guy in Sachi Brown, because he was working for the Washington Wizards at the time, and then brought him in to do basically the same job for the Ravens that they're asking Paul DePodesta to do. So, look, when we hear things on Twitter about, the Browns will run terribly, that's one thing. That's a fan's perspective. But look at how teams operate and look how similar it is to what the Cleveland Browns have been doing and being ridiculed for over the last couple of years. It's really not that different. And that tells you that they feel like the Browns are on to something good there.
Who's been the most disappointing player on the offensive side of the ball this preseason?
Oh man, I hate to do it to him.
You got to say it.
Yeah, it's Anthony Schwartz. Look, he's been through he has he's getting booed in the preseason. I mean, that really tells you everything that you need to know about it. But yeah, Anthony Schwartz. I mean, I personally am not that disappointed in Anthony Schwartz because my expectations just were never high for him to begin with.
Sure.
But I can understand, and look, this is what happens when you have high expectations or you put a player on a pedestal before they're ready for it, right? And I worry about this with Cade York because he's kind of being put on a pedestal right now. But they drafted him, and there was a certain segment of people who were like, man, He played at Auburn, and I never knew he played at Auburn. That's a problem, right?
Yeah.
And that was where I was, right? Because I'm like, I have never, ever heard Anthony Schwartz when I watch Auburn games. But then there was another subset of people who were like 4.22. Look at his athletic ability. Look at that RAS chart. He's Tyreek Hill. He's a third-round pick, right?
Yeah.
And once they found out he wasn't Tyreek Hill, they turned on him. And that's kind of where he's at. Look, he is a perfect example of why the NFL needs a developmental system. He's going to need more than his rookie contract to become a solid NFL player. And once he can, I mean, like those guys who are super fast like that, like Ted Ginn can play forever, but he might not ever get a chance to be that because quite frankly, he got drafted into a situation where they wanted him to develop into 2 years. That just wasn't realistic. He's not going to be ready. He's not ready in 2. And that's what the Browns were shooting for because originally he was supposed to replace Odell Beckham, right? He wasn't ready for that. He's not ready for it now. He's not going to be ready for it next year. He has a couple of years of growth in him, and this team's not going to be good enough for it. This team's too good enough to wait around for that, and any team that's not good enough is not going to be patient enough to wait 4 years for a player like that. He's in this no man's land of development where he just ain't got no shot unless he goes to the USFL or the XFL. And really, if I were him, just focus on that for 2 years and then comes back to the NFL, right? Because he just needs more growth. He needed more time in college. I feel like he needed better coaching in college. He's just so raw and there's so much work to be done with him that I just don't think there's enough time on his rookie deal for him to figure it out to a point to where you can justify re-signing him at any dollar amount.
Yeah, and the big thing about Schwartz too, remember when he got drafted, we looked at it and he said, well, okay, even if he's not going to be that Odell Beckham or a guy who's got great hands to be a wide receiver, at least he can return kicks and punts and he can give us that speed. He can't even do that. Right? We're returning kicks with running backs still. So if you can't play on special teams and you can't do your core role on the team, which is just go out there and catch the ball, people say like you can't teach speed. Speed is a talent, and I think to a certain degree that's the case. I mean, there are people that just naturally are fast. You can train on it and get a little bit faster, but catching is something that he could work on catching and get better at it. And I think that's really what the big problem is with Anthony. Yeah, I would agree. And I was poking fun of him on Twitter a little bit. I didn't mean to like crush the guy or anything like that. I was just kidding around with that Major League video that I posted. But then I was watching it yesterday and it was like, it's like 80,000 views. Then it was like 150,000 views. I'm like, dude, if this gets to this, like, I don't want to destroy this guy's confidence by just joking around with that Willie Mays Hayes thing. But like some people are really like, if you go up and Schwartz was trending today. I don't know if it was just me that he was trending, but he was like trending and everybody's like, if he's not cut on Wednesday, they're going to riot. So I don't know. I mean,
it shouldn't be at that point. Like he's not that bad that he needs to be cut. He's not going to get cut.
Quincy, he was the lowest rated PFF wide receiver. He was 12. Yeah. He was 12 guys below Corey Coleman in PFF in the preseason.
Yeah, look, I'm not going to lie. He put together the ultimate, like, worst preseason I've ever seen in my life, right? That doesn't mean that, like, in preseasons, the games that we see is only a fraction of the evaluation. I don't know what he looks like in practice. How he looks like in the preseason, obviously, it's very concerning. But ultimately, they're invested in him. They feel like there's something to squeeze out of it. And I feel like they're going to give him at least this season and the beginning of camp next year to be able to show any growth. And to them, it makes sense because it wouldn't benefit them unless they can really get somebody good to be that, because they still might think that, hey, Schwartz can develop into something better than what we can get at the bottom of a roster right now.
Yeah. And I mean, you look at the Browns Twitter and the Browns, what they're putting out there with clips. I mean, they're trying to boost the guy's confidence. They're putting up all the good catches that he's having. It doesn't appear that that teammates are coming down on him. I think he's just got to, right now, it's one of those things that the fans have kind of turned on him because of a couple plays. And I personally think that it all really started when he dropped those passes from Deshaun, in the first game when everybody was so excited to see him and he just kind of destroyed, 2 drives. And we knew we weren't going to see a lot of Deshaun anyway. It was almost like that pissed everyone off because they're like, come on, make the first down and we got a couple more plays with them.
Well, he has had a series of unfortunate events in Cleveland, right? There's the one play in Kansas City where he gets open, he's wide open, but he doesn't stay on his feet and he falls out of bounds. There is the infamous Baker Mayfield labrum interception that he looked to appear to
Which
slow
some
his
people
route.
are happy about. Some
Yeah.
people think he should be re-signed for that alone.
Yeah. And then, I mean, like, then after that, he just didn't get targeted. Every time Baker targeted him last year, Baker was like screaming at him too. That doesn't help. And then he gets into this offseason, and the first thing that we see in the preseason is him dropping balls left and right, right? And it just keeps happening, right? He had a decent game his second preseason game where there's no starters on the field. But then he comes into this third preseason game and my goodness, man, it was bad. Like, I just don't know what to do with that, right? And me personally, look, if I were the coach of the Browns, yeah, I would probably cut Anthony Schwartz, but I'm not the one who made the decision to draft him, right? And when you make the decision to draft him, you have more attachment, right? It's probably like if Perrion Winfrey doesn't pan out, I'm probably going to hang on to that a little bit more than everybody else because I believe in Perrion. I never believed in Anthony Schwartz. They do. They drafted him. So that's just what they're going to do. They're going to see it out. And look, that's what stable organizations do ultimately, right? If you talk to Pittsburgh fans, there are like 8 dudes on the roster every year that they hate, that they keep hanging on to, right? We need to cut Justin Lane. He's terrible. He's been terrible, but they're going to hang on to him until the end of that rookie deal because why release somebody for free that you believe in and let them blossom somewhere else, right?
Yeah.
So that's just the kind of thinking from the Browns front office. I do think we're a bit harsh on Anthony Schwartz. It's not like he's Corey Coleman, right? Like Corey Coleman was a first-round pick. There was that, and we traded like the second pick of the draft back to get Corey Coleman. Like that's almost justified how we kind of turned on Corey Coleman. But like, come on, man, why are we booing a dude who was a third-round pick? Like because he's not great?
Well, I don't like. How do you boo anybody in the preseason? Like legitimately booing somebody in an exhibition game. They might as well just have the coaches out there with clipboards like on the field with them calling plays with like, orange slices on the sidelines. I mean, it's like that much of a who gives a crap. And people are actually booing one particular guy. So I feel bad for him too. Actually, I really thought about deleting that tweet. Like when it started getting so much attention, I was like, I follow Anthony Schwartz. I want Anthony Schwartz to do well. Like I don't want him to be. I don't want any player in the Browns to do poorly. I'm not rooting against my own team, but it is kind of funny, to sit there and be like, look, this is. You could put an analogy to the Willie Mays Hayes thing. That's why I did that.